Hello chess friends and welcome to your out of chess channel and welcome to a truly spectacular gameplay by the latest version of Stockfish, the powerful Stockfish 16. Today we see the fish battling it out against another top engine Seer in an amazing open Catalan. So today we see the most dynamic of all Catalans. Today actually we'll see a certain, I would say, AlphaZero style here played by Stockfish 16. Really brilliant dynamic game played by the fish, in my opinion, one of the most amazing Catalan openings that I've seen in my life. So let's keep immediately to the game with the white pieces. The fish open with move knight to f3. We have knight to f6 by Seer. We have g3, e6, c4 after d4, d5 and d4, d takes c4 and bishop to g2. The game transposes now into the open Catalan. So of course, as usual, white is always this attacking chances with the light square bishop all over the board. Black took now the pawn on c4, and of course in the later stage of the game wants somehow to rely simply on this 4 versus 2 situation here on the queen side, simply relies on this pawn majority on the queen side. White on the other hand, of course, wants to try to get the pawn back, but of course, as I said, simply use this long diagonal, especially against the rook on a8. If you are interested more into this Catalan opening, I have created also a separate playlist, the Catalan opening from white and from black's perspective. Here's the link of the playlist, please check it out. You can have, I think, a great preparation in this types of positions. So after move bishop to g2, a6 by Seer. Seer wants, of course, to connect now the pawns, wants to play b5 and of course support the pawn on c4. Stockfish continues with castling. We have knight to c6, a normal plans, of course, also in some lines covering this diagonal, because it's very rare that white will give up the bishop for a knight in an early stage of the game. So that's why black is placing another minor piece here on this diagonal. We have now a very dynamic line, has been played many times in top GM level. Stockfish plays the amazing queen to c2. Interesting line, which leaves, of course, the pawn on d4 unprotected. Here, if you try b5, for instance, to again fix the structure instead of taking the pawn on d4, then there is this dynamic idea. Knight to e5, knight to b4 would be then black's continuation, queen to d1, and after knight to d5, still I think white should be slightly better because of this line. b3 would actually break the position here. e4 in the later stages, also an opportunity. White will eventually connect the pawns, has also good chances with the dark square bishop. So this is not, I think, the optimal line here for black. After queen to c2, Seer accepts the challenge, plays now knight takes d4. We have knight takes d4, queen to d4. So far black is having now 2 extra pawns, but Stockfish has, of course, this resource. Knight to d2 hits, of course, the pawn on c4. And now, of course, you cannot protect anymore the pawn. b5 is not possible, so that's why Seer plays the most important line here, plays c3. Here black is basically saying, okay, I'll give you my pawn back, but I'll do it in my way, because at least after this move c3 you have to weaken the structure. Now of course this is not a healthy structure anymore. Here at least Seer provoked a new weakness in white's position. It's of course the isolated c pawn. We have now queen to c5. Seer stays also on this file, on the c file. For instance, if the c file clears, then of course black could maybe trade off the queens, simplify the game. I think black would love to now simplify the game as much as it's possible, because black is of course now on the defensive side. White is already very aggressive, because white has always, as I mentioned in the beginning, this long diagonal, has already the knight out, the bishop will eventually come into the game, and black is now tough time to develop the minor pieces, especially also the bishop on c8, which is in many of these lines simply paralyzed by the pawn on e6. So that's why black has to be fast also now in development. So here after move queen to c5 by Seer, Stockfish plays c4, a theoretical novelty, a move that has not been played so far in chess history. Rook to b1 has been played, knight to e4 in some lines, and also queen to b3 has been played in chess history. Stockfish plays now the amazing c4 move, and this move you see now, it's very important. I think this is really cool what the fish is doing. Actually, the main weakness, as we said, the weak c3 pawn you see now will eventually become white's main strength in the continuation of the game. Really a spectacular preparation here by white with the move c4. Nothing seems dramatic already, but I guarantee you this pawn will be really one of the most dynamic opportunities here for white. So we have bishop to e7 by Seer. Stockfish continues with rook to b1. Of course, is hitting now the weak pawn on b7. If you try to, of course, protect the pawn with the rook, then there is this idea: knight to e4, knight takes e4, bishop to e4 hits, of course, the weak square on h7. Now you play something like h6 in order to somehow prevent this idea bishop takes h7, but then white is having a great activity with bishop to e3. You step back maybe to h5, and now there is this idea: bishop to c6. You cannot take, of course, because your rook is hanging. You have to play king to f8, and I guarantee you this is not a fun position here to play anymore for black. Black has lost now the privilege of castling. White has a great activity, in my opinion, one-way ticket here in white's favor. So that's why after rook to b1, Seer plays now the move c6, locks out now the diagonal here for the light square bishop, but this move creates new dark square problems all over the board, so Stockfish will try now to exploit these weaknesses. We have now rook to b3. Here I think white has the initiative. Stockfish plays a beautiful rook lift. As I said, all of the minor pieces are almost out. We have to somehow only liberate our dark square bishop, and there is now even the opportunity to play bishop to a3 in some lines if the queen doesn't react correctly. If you castle immediately, then of course bishop to a3 immediately takes the piece here on e7. So that's why after rook to b3 we have queen to h5 by Seer. Seer is now desperately trying to play the move e5, and then maybe bishop to h3 would force then the trade of light square bishops, which would be, I think, a decent choice for black, giving trading off the worst minor piece of black for actually the most powerful minor piece of white. It's of course the bishop on g2. And now Stockfish plays the ultimate stunner of this game. Maybe you can pause the video and try to see now the best continuation here for white. I'm not saying this move is winning or something, but it's actually the most progressive idea. It's the most dynamic idea. It's, I think, an idea that gives you at least some chances to attack the position further. So pause the video, take your time as much as you want, and try to see now really for the best continuation for white. Okay, here Stockfish plays the amazing c5. It seems almost impossible to play this move, but as I said in the beginning, the most vulnerable pawn becomes actually white's main strength. c5 paralyzes again the dark squares all over the board, and the issue here is that actually you have a tough time if you take the pawn immediately. For instance, if you try queen to c5, then there is this problem. Knight to c4 is again threatening the move bishop to a3. If you try b5 to kick away the knight, it seems tempting, because if the knight moves, then again the queens would be off the board. But then this idea is working. Bishop to a3, you take now, maybe here the knight on c4. Now we play rook to c3. You have to step back with the queen, and now bishop to c6 is again destroying black's position. After bishop to a3, what you could do is maybe here to play queen to h5, but again this pawn on c6 is hanging. Knight to d6 is an opportunity, so this is not working. So after move knight to c4, what you could do is maybe to play the move a5. You don't want to react maybe, but then sorry, let's go back. So that was our analysis after queen to c5. As we said, we play knight to c4, you play b5, now we play bishop to a3, and this would be then a messed up position. If you play here a5 in this particular position, then bishop to e3, very, very dangerous. You have to step back now with the queen, and now after queen to f5, e takes f5, knight to b6 is again a very, very messy position to handle. Look at this, you cannot play even rook to b8 because bishop to f4 is going to happen, and now the piece piece will be taken, so it's also not working. So this move knight to c4 is actually a beautiful idea then to occupy the b6 weakness. So let's go back. After move c5, what you could do is maybe also to play the move bishop to c5, but this again would not work because after bishop to f3, the queen is always stuck to the defense of the bishop on c5. Now you have to play maybe something like queen to g5 in order to stay connected, but then this idea is working. Discovered attack against the queen and also against the bishop. If you move the queen to e5, then bishop to b2, queen to f5, knight to e4, again attacks the piece. You play something like, I don't know, bishop to e7. Now we play knight takes f6, bishop to f6, and again this tactic is working. Bishop takes c6. After b takes c6, of course, we play queen to c6 and we simply take the rook. Again, you have to play king to f8, bishop to a3 in some lines is possible. Queen to bishop to e4, of course, first kicking away the queen, but again, I think this is game over here for black. So c5, really a brilliant idea. You cannot take this pawn, although this pawn is twice attacked by black's pieces. We have now kingside castling by Seer, so Seer noticed this tactical problems, and now Stockfish plays again on this interesting idea, knight to c4. As we said, this idea is clear. We want to occupy the b6 weakness, or maybe even d6 if possible, and then take out here the piece, and maybe also take out the pawn on b7. Let's see what happens if you play queen to c5. If you play queen to c5, then bishop to a3 again wins the piece immediately here for white. This is not working. After knight to c4, that's why we have bishop takes c5 by Seer, and now Stockfish plays the beautiful bishop to b2, and Stockfish has now finished the development. All of the pieces are out. Stockfish is down 2 pawns, but has, I think, a beautiful compensation in piece activity. Look at this. All of these pieces are basically on the most optimal squares. Bishop on g2, perfectly fine. Knight on c4, very centralized. Can, of course, use many of the squares. Rook on b3, very dangerous. Will be all over the board. Bishop on b2, also on the optimal square. Queen on c2, also not endangered by black's pieces. Rook on f1 will eventually come into the game, so really spectacular compensation for the lost 2 pawns. And what should now black do? Basically, there are 2 options. You can play this idea that Seer played, e5, finally getting the bishop into the game. You could also try maybe to keep this dark square bishop in the game, maybe on this diagonal, retreating simply out of this maybe tactical mess here again by the queen, and also with bishop to a3 we saw there were also always some dangerous possibilities. But now bishop to f3, the queen gets a little bit in danger. You're trying maybe to trade off the queens, then queen to c1. You're trying maybe to get the knight into the game. Now we play knight to d6 again. You see, always a weakness, b6 or d6. These are the most vulnerable squares in black's camp. You can maybe try rook to b8 to somehow hold this position, but now with rook to b4, for instance, the knight is endangered. You can try h5, h3. Maybe knight takes f2 is working, but actually after king to g2, the knight gets trapped, so it's also here not working. What you could try here is maybe the move a5 after move h3, but again, rook to c4, you retreat, then king to g2 improves the position of the king. You play something like, I don't know, knight to f5, takes, and now rook to h4. It's very dangerous. Also, the h pawn could be lost. Then again, there are some worries here on the on the h file by the queen. The queen could maybe later come into the game. I see some tactics like rook to h5. Maybe the queen retreats. You can even some lines, I think, sacrifice something, get the queen into the game. So I don't want to show you, of course, all of the possible lines, but I guarantee you black will not have fun also in this particular position. So that's why after bishop to b2, Seer goes for this plan, e5, hopes finally to get rid of this monster bishop on g2, but Stockfish continues now with knight to e5, of course. The bishop is hanging on c5. Here Seer retreats to a7, and now rook to b4. That's the move that we have been waiting for here by the fish. Now we see an amazing rook lift, and of course there's not so much that can be done against rook to h4. Really crazy performance here by the fish. Rook to h4, and of course then you're trying maybe to deflect or maybe kick away this key defender of h7. The queen is already targeting the h7 square. Really dynamic play all over the board here by Stockfish 16. What should again black do? In the game, a5 was played kicking away the rook. But even if you try maybe something like rook to e8, attacking the knight, then there is this problem. Bishop to f3, queen to g5. Now knight takes f7 is here an even a possibility, because you can never really even leave the protection of the f7 score, because after king to f7, bishop to f6 is going to happen. You cannot take with the queen. Rook to f4 is immediately winning the game. If you take, of course, here with the pawn, then queen to h7, you have to cover. Bishop to h5, takes, and now the rook is hanging. This is also, for instance, an amazing line that could have happened. So rook to e8 seems tempting, seems like it's opening now finally the position for black, but you get destroyed again by the beautiful piece activity here of white. So that's why after rook to b4, a5, but as promised, rook to h4, and there is now huge problem around the square h7 here. White should be actually much better. Queen to f5, hoping here to trade off the pieces, finally releasing the pressure, but Stockfish plays, of course, e4, kicks away the queen, queen to e6, and now the knight gets again on this beautiful square on c4, and now there is the preparation e5, and of course maybe in some lines even deliver checkmate here on h7. For instance, if you try b5, then e5 is going to happen. You cannot take here the knight with the queen. That's the issue, because still the rook is protecting. You maybe play b takes c4, then we take of course the knight on f6. You play something like g6, and after queen to c1, I'm not seeing good ways how black is going to defend this position. Queen to h6 is coming, and this is game over. So see, knight to c4, very progressive move by white. Prepares, of course, the move e5. We have h6 by Seer. Seer notices, of course, the problems around the square h7. Stockfish continues with e5 anyway. We have knight to d5, and now knight to d6. That's the move that Stockfish was hoping for. This becomes now the octopus knight that controlling many squares all over the board, and again with some tactical opportunities. Of course, now we basically improved the position of the minor piece, and I'm seeing also nice ideas with knight to f5, bishop to e4, bishop to f5. So from this point on, I think the game becomes really a one-way ticket here in white's favor. So we have bishop to d7 by Seer, bishop to f3 by the fish, knight to b4, kick away the queen, and now queen to d2. Very important move, which again creates new threats, maybe around the square h6. So far, the square is protected, but in the later state of the game, maybe the position could crack here around the square. And the main defensive problem, I think, here for black is that the queen is playing a certain blockade. White, of course, wants to play e6, liberating then also the diagonal for the Darsko bishop, and the queen is not supposed to play as such a defensive piece that only prevents one pawn movement. So in my opinion, not the optimal square, of course, for the queen. This is now the main idea, to push the pawn on e6. What should black do? If you, for instance, continue to rook from a to d8, maybe you're trying even to sack the rook for the knight, then bishop to e4, in my opinion, very hard to handle here for black. Knight to f5, bishop to f5 in some lines is working, so knight to f5 I think should be really the most powerful idea here for white. So even if you try here knight takes a2, this wouldn't be good, because then after knight to e4, knight to f6 is then a huge threat. Knight to f6, g takes f6, queen to h6, and then you getting destroyed by the heavy artillery on the h file. This is really a devastating position. So that's why after move knight to d2, we have knight to d5. Seer is desperately trying now to get the knight back into the game. Stockfish continues with knight to e4 with the preparation to play the move knight to f6 anyway. What should black do? Even if you try queen to g6, then knight to f6 is again working. After something like g takes f6, then e6 is really progressive here. Bishop to e6, rook to h6. You have to step back, takes, and now look at this. Bishop to f6 in some lines is working. You're trying maybe rook to d5. We take out the queen. You take out the queen, but now, for instance, bishop to f6 is winning the game. There's simply no protection of the checkmate threat anymore on h8. You can just prolong the game, of course, by sacrificing some material. Really crazy stuff. So see, even queen to g6 is not working, because there is always this progressive idea, knight to f6. Even if you take with the knight, then of course here e takes f6 now attacks even the bishop. You play something like rook from a to d8. Now we take. You have to step back, rook to h6, rook to h8. again, messed up position here for black. Really spectacular preparation, this move knight to f6. Rook from a to d8 was played now by Seer. Stockfish plays knight to f6. Anyway, we have knight takes f6, e takes f6. Again, with some dirty ideas here around the square g7. We have bishop to c8, hitting the queen. Queen to c2, again by the fish. What should you do? Even if you play something like bishop to b8, you're trying maybe somehow to compete on this diagonal. Then bishop to g4, queen to g4, you have to now give up some material, and even f takes g7 is first of all working because now the rook is hanging. I don't know, you play something like queen to g5 with takes, and now a rook to e1. Perfect position, I think, here for white. So after move queen to c2 that Stockfish played, Seer tried a4, but now comes again this idea, bishop to e4. Here Seer was really forced now to play the move bishop to d4, somehow, as I said, locking simply the diagonal for the dark square bishop. This is not working because after bishop to h7, the check, Stockfish simply took the piece, rook to d4, and after f takes g7, king takes g7. In this particular position, the Seer engine resigned because, of course, the rook is hanging on d4, and it was, of course, a very fair decision here to resign. So, great Catalan, great attack, especially with this idea in the beginning to play the move c5. This move really paralyzes the whole queen side, although black has an extra pawn on the queen side, but actually white is dominating on this side of the board. Really cool stuff. And then when Stockfish took the c4 square, from that square we saw b6 weak, d6 square always weak. Stockfish rerouted the knight on the perfect squares, and then this tactic knight to f6 was really devastating. Great game here by Stockfish 16. So, okay, I hope that you enjoyed this game. I really enjoyed it a lot. The interesting ideas of the Catalan opening. As I said, if you want to see more about the spectacular opening, please check out our Catalan opening studies. Here's the link of our playlist. And if you want to see more beautiful gameplay by Stockfish, or maybe by AlphaZero, LilaZero, Dragon Engine, and many more, check out our community chess games played by computer series. Here's also the link. And if you like this content, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos. And what do we say in the end? Chess is the best, of course.